21. Negro girl is suspended from school after incident. Arkansas Gazette, December 18, 1957. My hopes for a blissful 2-week respite from CENTRAL high over Christmas vacation had been dashed by the dilemma we all faced because of Minijan's suspension. By dumping the chili over the white boys' heads, whether accidentally or not, she had opened a door through which segregationist leaders announced they would eject all of us. It was the beginning of the end of Little Rock school integration, they said. Immediately, cards and flyers appeared all over town reading, 1 nigger down, 8 to go. Her suspension notice stated Minijan could not begin the process to apply for readmission until 6 school days had passed. Classes would resume on January 3 of the new year. Greatest fear was that Superintendent Blossom would use this opportunity to get segregationists off the school board members' backs by refusing her reentry. Segregationists had long been threatening a recall of the school board. If the board denied Minijan readmission, they might stave off that recall and save their jobs. So instead of the peaceful, happy, safe Christmas vacation I had dreamed of for months, I was embroiled in integration, meetings, and worry. It was that nagging kind of problem that stays at the back of your mind, no matter what else is going on. Will they or won't they let Minijan back in school? And if they don't, what will it mean to the rest of us? Local and national NAACP officials were alarmed because they saw the incident as the first sign of significant progress in the segregationists' campaign to get us out of school. It jeopardized the progress they had worked for so many years to realize. The outcome of her case could affect not only the Little Rock case, but all integration efforts across the South. If expulsion were a way to stop integration, segregationists would make it their weapon. As I entered the living room early one evening, Grandma was setting up the manger scene, gingerly placing each of the crudely carved wooden figures that had been handed down from her mother. She wouldn't allow any of us to help for fear we'd drop a piece. What with all her baking and decorating and gift-making, this was her favorite time of the year, next to spring planting. Did you see that nasty letter on the front page of the Gazette telling businesses to stop advertising in that paper? Grandma asked. I sure hope nobody listens. It's a sign the segregationists have begun their campaign on a whole new level, she said. They're gonna dig in folks' pockets now. Guess they're pretty hopping mad at the Gazette, Mother, Lois said, breezing into the room. They're accusing that paper of breaking down segregation laws with its attitude. She made a funny face as she continued. I don't know how they figure that. Well, anyhow, that great lambasting in the paper ought to prepare you for what they just might plan for Minijan. You've got to get ready for it, Grandma said. He wondered what awful thing they could possibly have in store for us. You've been a bit down-spirited lately, she went on. When did worry ever make anything happen your way? Minijan either is or is not going to stay in school. Worry won't fix it. I took a deep breath and sank into the couch. Waiting for Mother Lois to get dressed for a party we were to attend to honor the Little Rock 9. Where are you going? Conrad asked. Mom and I are going to a grown-up Christmas party, I answered. I didn't want to make too much of it because I figured he was beginning to feel left out, what with all the fuss being made over me in newspapers and magazines and now a party planned in our honor. The National Organization of Delta Sigma Theta, a professional women's sorority, had decided to give us a Christmas party at the Dunbar Community Center. It was the first time some of my own people were saying a public thanks to us. It lightened some of the pain I felt for all those who were critical of our going to Central. As I entered the community center, sorority women, showing off their high fashion and high spirits, greeted us as though we were very important. They had made us their secret project, with members of the nationwide organization mailing gifts and loving notes from across the country to be presented to us that evening. I was bursting with pride as people said nice things about my courage and about what we 9 were doing for future generations who would be able to attend integrated schools. It wasn't the kind of party where you have teenage fun, but it was wonderful just the same, especially because I had so few opportunities to socialize. Minijan's suspension was only mentioned in passing. Despite that worry, we 9 enjoyed each other as friends, once outside the pressure we shared at Central High. We compared our gifts, of course. My favorite was a carved mahogany jewelry box. I'll keep this forever and give it to my grandchildren, I thought to myself as I carefully placed it on the nightstand beside my bed later that evening. In my diary I wrote, tonight I feel love from my own people. Everybody tried to make us happy. There is the tiniest flicker of hope and joy inside me. Maybe things will work out. Please, God, won't you allow Minnie Jean to come back to school just this once? I promise I'll help her. Be stronger. I see where Mr. Bennett is applying pressure to that interracial human rights group, bugging them to give up their membership records again, Grandma said over breakfast the next morning, as she folded the newspaper. You know, he and that law he got passed are becoming more than just a nuisance. He's doing some real damage. As Grandma read snippets of information from the paper and discussed it with Mother, we noted alarming and increasing examples of segregationists applying pressure to our people in new and different ways. They were systematically attacking on all sides anyone who might support us in any fashion. However, I wasn't going to let it bother me today. This was one of my favorite times of all, the family's annual last-minute Christmas shopping spree in downtown Little Rock. We had avoided going there for a long time, afraid I might be attacked. But I wasn't about to let the integration steal my Christmas shopping trip. I argued with all my might. I could wear a disguise. Stores couldn't afford to invite trouble that might interfere. With sales on and on I went. Thank God I'd won, I whispered, as we all piled out of the car. Looking around, I was absolutely awestruck by the holiday decorations and music that surrounded us. Inside, the stores were filled with Christmas magic and all the delightful things I had seen in magazines that I so desperately wanted but seldom could afford. On this one very special day of the year, as a Christmas treat, Mother Lois gave us each $25 to shop. She asked that we remain within shouting distance of her and Grandma while we browsed. As always, the white clerks gave me dirty looks whenever I touched the merchandise. They had only recently allowed my people to try on clothes in a few of their stores. They behaved as though they begrudged our being there, even though we were going to hand our money over to them. Having all that shopping fun enabled me to ignore their disapproval. Hey, a nigger without a soldier guard. It was the boy who had threatened to kill me ever since I kicked him in the crotch. My first thoughts were to shout for help, to run away, but I couldn't let him think I was a coward. We've only got 8 niggers in our school now. He spoke very loud to the boy standing beside him. We're getting rid of the others, too. But this one here, she's not gonna live to go anywhere. Yeah, Andy, if you get her out, you get that big prize money everybody's talking about. Ain't no money gonna make me feel as good as killing her, Andy said, glaring at me. Frantically, I searched for a way to get us all safely out of the store. Trying to behave as though I were not alarmed, I casually examined items that lay on the counter nearest me. When I had moved a short distance away from Andy, I quickened my pace. Just then Conrad approached me. Grabbing him by the collar, I tried to signal him that something was wrong, but he didn't understand. Hey, Melba, let's put our money together and buy this new game. Look, it's got the thud of my heart racing in my ears drowned out his words. I hoped his excited voice would attract Mother and Grandma, but it was Andy who responded. To him, 2 niggers. I wonder what I'll get for both of them. Andy moved toward us. Don't you call my sister a nigger, Conrad was yelling back at him. I hope their voices wouldn't cause a store-wide fracas. This way, Grandmother India said, shoving us ahead. Hurry, Mother said. Conrad protested in a loud voice as we quickly hustled to I didn't know where. This isn't the way to the front door, I protested. Move it, girl, Grandma whispered. All at once I realized where she was going. The restroom. Great, I thought. We'll be temporarily safe there, but then they'll call the police and we'll be trapped. Once inside, I had to catch my breath and bring up a polite smile to greet 3 ladies from our church who stood preening themselves in front of the mirror. Gracious, Lois, that boy is old enough to do his business with the men, said Sister Floyd, annoyance on her face. My baby is just a little ill. I'll have to tend him. Grandma shoved Conrad into a stall, beckoning Mother to come closer as she whispered to her. I imagined a big ugly scene where policemen arrested us as Andy, and a crowd of hecklers cheered. Mother didn't seem as frightened as she ambled up to Mrs. Floyd and started a conversation about the Christmas social. As the ladies headed for the door, Grandma ushered Conrad and me to follow close on their heels. Sure enough, Andy and his friends stood just outside the door looking like angry lions waiting to devour prey. Grandma glared at them as she said, Why, my goodness, I guess you 2 gentlemen are forced to make a pathway so as the 7 of us can squeeze past. The scowls on their faces melted into sour frustration as they eyeballed the church ladies and slowly backed off. Sister Floyd weighed at least 250 pounds. Sister Laney probably weighed a tad more, and Sister Belle was no slouch, what with her sleek, athletic 6-foot body. After we had traveled some distance, I looked back to see Andy and his friend following us, but not up close. Well, young lady, from now on, you can just give me your list, and I'll take care of it. I don't know what we would have done without the sisters, Mama said as we piled into the car and looked all around us, taking deep breaths. It was the Christmas spirit that lulled us into letting our guard down, Grandma grumbled on the way home. Going downtown, seeing all the people shopping and the decorations, had always been one of the best parts of my holiday celebration. The segregationists had stolen yet another important piece of my life. They had taken away my Christmas shopping fun. The day before Christmas, the Gazette carried 2 major local stories, White Christmas banned at CSS, and 13 lawsuits pending over integration. I was reading the articles as Conrad and Mother Lois prepared to go shopping without me. The first story about White Christmas embarrassed me. How could they assume we didn't know the difference between white snow and white folks? The second article said the federal courts were deluged by new filings and a backlog of cases on the racial integration issue. They would all be settled in the next months before the start of the new school year. Some of the issues to be ruled on applied to our case. If the judge ruled against integration, our surviving all the brutal punishment at Central would be in vain because they would use those rulings to kick us out of their school. When Mother Lois and Conrad left for downtown, I told myself being left behind didn't matter anymore. At least I was grateful that I didn't have to go to Central that day. Besides, nothing could make me sad with Christmas so close and Grandma rattling paper and hiding gifts while I felt safe and snuggled warm, watching television as I dusted the living room. Christmas Eve was delightful as we sat sipping hot chocolate and wrapping gifts to place under the tree. Each of us traded a personal gift. If during the year one of us coveted something that belonged to another, we might get the temporary loan of that item for January of the new year. We especially looked forward to those gift notes in our stockings. For example, I was thinking about granting Conrad the privilege of using my stereo twice a day for 1 month, but I wasn't certain I could be that generous, so I wrote maybe on my note to him. Thence called to say he would come by on Christmas, with Mother's permission. The thought of our being together near the tree on that special day, listening to carols, really sparked romantic daydreams. But as always, my daydreams were so much better than the reality of being with him, because we now had very little in common. He still spent most of his time questioning me about Central and teasing me about being a celebrity. Of course, like lots of young people and adults, he teased me about Minajon's chili incident. It made me feel uneasy about continuing to like him so much. If he really understood what I was going through, he should realize that the chili incident was a big crisis in my life, one that worried me every moment of every day. I began to wonder whether I was better off just being with Vince in my daydreams. Each day of vacation, Minajan and I spent time on the phone or on visits, talking at length about what might happen to her. The more we talked, the more we realized it was something we could do little about. The final word rested with Superintendent Blossom. Later that evening, Papa Will came by to bring his presents. I hadn't seen much of my father since the integration began, but this time he was in a good mood. He didn't bother to say I told you so, even though his awful predictions about integration causing trouble had for the most part come true. He was pleasant and genuinely concerned. The best part was the surprise he had hidden on the front porch, a brand new television set with a big screen. He had chosen a special small gift for each of us. The fact that he put lots of time and thought into the gift selection made me feel that despite the way he had behaved, maybe he really did love me. He and Mama looked at each other fondly for just an instant, and it felt as though we were a family again. I sometimes prayed they would get back together. At first Conrad and I had hoped, against hope. As the years passed, we watched them grow apart in odd ways that made us sad. Rumors around church were that Papa even had a girlfriend now. But just for an instant, Conrad and I eyed each other, both thinking how nice it would be if he stayed. Maybe they would go with us to the family dinner and announce they were getting back together. But then Papa looked at his watch, cleared his throat, and off he went as though he had an important thing or person to get back to. As Mother walked him to the door, I heard her invite him to our family Christmas dinner the next day at Aunt Maydell's house, but he said he didn't feel comfortable there. Dear Diary, it's Christmas Eve, and Papa's not coming home to stay. For 9 Christmases now I've prayed he would be with us. Maybe it's not gonna happen. Could I please have a nice, new stepfather? I will be done. By next Christmas, either I want things to be a lot better at Central, or I want to be somewhere else. Please God. Merry Christmas. Christmas dinner with the family was the biggest occasion of the year, a time when we spent the day catching up on family love and bloodline gossip, as Grandma called it. We were 27 laughing, chatting people. I had waited all year to see all the relatives who weren't at Thanksgiving. Even though all of them had definite opinions about my adventures at Central High, I had vowed not to talk about it. No matter what it took, I wanted to pretend life was normal again. I wanted the feeling of Christmas before integration. By late evening, as we sat in front of the fire singing Christmas carols, I realized maybe I had my wish. I hadn't felt that content since the summer before in Cincinnati. Little Rock story second on AP's best list, Arkansas Gazette, December 29, 1957. The stories ranged from number 1, the launching of Sputnik, to Nikita Khrushchev emerging at the top of the Kremlin, the Teamsters Union hearings, Hurricane Audrey, President Eisenhower's stroke, Asian flu, and the passage of the Civil Rights Bill. How strange, I thought, to be involved in something that the whole nation considers among its 10 most important stories. If it's that important, you'd think somebody would be able to do something to make the Central High students behave themselves. Is it that nobody cares, or nobody knows what to do? By New Year's Eve, I only thought about Central High perhaps every other hour. Vince had invited me to a party, but of course Grandma and Mama said no. Besides, our famous Shad, Owls, Mutt, and Jeff were parked across the street, faithful as hound dogs in their vigilance. Although we discussed reporting them to the police, we knew full well that might bring on more trouble. So we simply lived with their being there, watching us. Mother didn't like my coming and going at night even when the party was in my neighborhood. Only on rare occasions did any of us go out after dark. Once dusk came, we locked all the doors and windows and closed the curtains. So on New Year's Eve, I sat home completing my list of New Year's resolutions. 1. To do my best to stay alive until May 29. 2. To pray daily for the strength not to fight back. 3. To keep faith and understand more of how Gandhi behaved when his life was really hard. 4. To behave in a way that pleases Mother and Grandma. 5. To maintain the best attitude I can at school. 6. To help Grandma India with her work. 7. To help Minnie John remain in school, to be a better friend to her.